It's a photograph that political experts across America said would never exist. It's the image of Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani, the 34-year-old Democratic socialist who promised to Trump-proof New York, sitting across a table from President Donald Trump, the man who spent the last 6 months calling him a communist and threatening to choke off federal funding to the city. The meeting happened. The two political opposites sat down in Washington this week to discuss the future of New York, the stated agenda, the affordability crisis. But the real agenda was political survival. Did Mayor-elect Mamdani walk away with a major concession, or did he sacrifice the political capital of his anti-establishment campaign simply to get a photo op? Today we break down what was said, what was implied, and what this stunning détente means for the two biggest fights Mamdani faces before his January 1st inauguration, the $600 million NYPD budget cut, and the looming threat of federal retaliation. To understand the political theater, we have to look at the pressure on the mayor-elect. New York City, like every major metropolis, relies heavily on federal funding for essential services, housing, transportation, infrastructure, and crucial social safety nets like SNAP, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. President Trump was explicit during the campaign. Elect Mamdani and the funding dries up. Mamdani's progressive mandate, free bus service, rent freezes, and the creation of a new Department of Community Safety all rely on a delicate balancing act of municipal financing. If the federal spigot were suddenly turned off, the city's budget would face an immediate, catastrophic shortfall. This would not only make his promises impossible to keep, but it would also threaten basic services, turning his transition into a political disaster before he even took the oath of office. The choice was clear. Mamdani could either maintain his rigid ideological opposition and risk fiscal ruin, or he could swallow his pride, fly to Washington, and attempt a political de-escalation. He chose the latter. Mamdani's team was savvy in setting the agenda. They knew they couldn't lead with police reform or foreign policy, so they led with the president's own campaign rhetoric, the rising cost of living. Mamdani framed the meeting as a pragmatic discussion focused on how federal policy impacts New Yorkers struggling to afford essentials. Specifically, he challenged the administration's moves to cut funding to the SNAP program, arguing that federal actions are exacerbating the very affordability crisis Trump claimed he wanted to solve. For the mayor-elect, the primary goal was not to win a grant, but to win a promise that the Trump administration would, at minimum, maintain the status quo of federal disbursements. This single-issue focus allowed Mamdani to control the narrative. He was acting in service of New Yorkers, not compromising his socialist ideals. The meeting itself was brief and tightly controlled. The media reports suggest a highly formal environment, lacking the warmth of a true détente, but crucially, also lacking the public hostility many expected. What did they agree on? They agreed to keep talking. That's it. There were no immediate policy breakthroughs, no grand announcements, and no signed agreements on rent control or infrastructure. The outcome was purely political, two rivals acknowledging the necessity of their relationship. For President Trump, the meeting was an opportunity to show a magnanimous side, proving he's willing to talk to a political adversary for the sake of the city where he built his career. It also served to remind the media that he remains a powerful political arbiter, even for his opponents. For Mayor-elect Mamdani, the photo op was the prize. It achieved the immediate goal of reducing the political temperature. The simple act of the president meeting him and talking about affordability legitimized Mamdani's leadership and his core platform in the eyes of nervous financial markets and centrist Democrats who have questioned his inexperience. However, this meeting came at a cost. Mamdani spent months championing the idea of an uncompromised progressive resistance. By engaging with Trump on his terms, the mayor-elect potentially alienated some of his hard-left base who might view this as the first of many political compromises required to govern. It shifts the narrative from Mamdani will fight Washington to Mamdani will negotiate with Washington. This sacrifice of ideological purity is a recurring tension we expect to cover extensively in the Mamdani dossier. The success of the Mam-Trump Summit has immediate local implications, particularly for the NYPD budget crisis we detailed in our last video. Remember, Mamdani wants to reallocate $600 million from the NYPD to create a Department of Community Safety, a massive, expensive initiative. The only way he can absorb the political and fiscal blowback from this cut is if the rest of the city's budget is stable. By temporarily neutralizing the federal threat, Mamdani has bought himself breathing room. He can now focus his political capital and the skills of his new transition team, specifically budget veteran Dean Fulian, on the local battle with the PBA. If the federal money is secure, the NYPD budget cuts look less like a fiscal disaster and more like a deliberate policy choice, which is exactly how Mamdani wants to frame it. This federal de-escalation also enables Mamdani to proceed aggressively on his other key priority, going after private equity. The appointment of antitrust crusader Lina Khan to his transition team was a clear signal to New York landlords and healthcare monopolists that his administration is coming for them. Mamdani is essentially saying, I have stabilized the federal relationship, so don't assume I'm too busy to come after you locally. The pressure now shifts entirely to the local power centers he intends to regulate. The Mam-Trump Summit will go down as one of the most consequential and politically awkward meetings of his transition. Mamdani was able to exchange a temporary compromise on optics for what appears to be a stabilization of the federal budget threat. He has bought himself time and political leverage. Now the focus shifts back to City Hall and the clock counting down to January 1, 2026. PBA is still lobbying aggressively against his budget plan. The corporate landlords are bracing for Lina Khan's policy influence. And Mamdani still needs to appoint the crucial cabinet positions, especially the new police commissioner, who will implement his vision. This meeting was the necessary prologue. Now the real political drama of the Mamdani administration begins. Let me know what you think of this development in the comments below. Will this détente hold, or is the federal threat simply postponed? Be sure to check out the links below to catch up on our full series, The Mamdani Dossier.